The first rays of sunlight filtered through the tall glass windows of the luxurious lobby in Gangnam, glinting off the polished marble floors. Hannah Kim, 22, moved quietly with a mop in her hands, her uniform slightly oversized, sleeves rolled up, a little smudge of sweat on her temple. She loved the early mornings, the calm before the city awoke, but today something in the air felt heavier. Maybe it was the lingering chill from the night, or perhaps just the anticipation of another long day cleaning a place that didn't care to notice her. She pushed the mop forward in a rhythm she had perfected over months, each stroke echoing softly in the vast emptiness. Her muscles ached slightly, but her mind wandered. She was thinking about her mother's words from yesterday. "Keep your head high, Hannah. No one can take your dignity away." Not ever. She smiled faintly, feeling a surge of courage in her chest. And then it happened. A pair of shiny, expensive shoes stepped onto the floor she had just cleaned. Wet footprints appeared like a betrayal in the polished marble. Hannah's eyes shot up, narrowing at the owner of the shoes. Standing before her was Ethan Park, 28, tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his expression a mix of curiosity and amusement. The Park Group heir, rumored to command the city before breakfast, looked down at her as if she were a minor inconvenience, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of challenge that made her stomach twist. "Hey, watch it. I just cleaned that," she snapped, her voice firm despite the small quiver of nerves in her throat. Her heart was palpitating. Her hands gripped the mop handle a little tighter. She wasn't used to confronting someone like him, yet some instinct urged her not to bow, not to shrink. Ethan's eyes widened slightly, a hint of surprise crossing his composed face. Instead of the apology she expected, a smirk played on his lips. "You must be new here. People usually just bow." His tone was playful yet edged with arrogance. "Well," Hannah replied, her voice steady now, chest rising and falling with newfound defiance, "I'm not people." The air between them seemed to crackle. Ethan tilted his head, intrigued. No one had ever dared to speak to him like that. Not with such fearless honesty. His usual world, where deference followed him like shadows, suddenly felt foreign. Hannah, standing there with her mop, the faint scent of cleaning solution clinging to her, had shifted something in him, a ripple in his carefully controlled life. Hannah turned sharply and walked away, trying to quell the sudden heat rising to her cheeks, a fluttering in her chest she couldn't quite explain. She could feel his gaze following her, heavy yet strange, almost soft. As she disappeared around a corner, Ethan lingered, staring at the reflection of her retreating figure in the gleaming marble floor. A smile tugged at the corner of his lips, a genuine one, rare and unpracticed. For the first time in years, he felt a twinge of something he hadn't allowed himself to recognize. Intrigue. Curiosity. Something that could grow into more if he dared. Hannah, outside the lobby now, inhaled deeply, letting the crisp morning air fill her lungs. She could still feel the heat of the confrontation in her chest, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. A little thrill of pride mingled with fear. "I can't believe I just did that," she thought, a small victorious smile brushing her lips. Meanwhile, Ethan lingered, looking at her reflection as if trying to memorize the boldness in her posture, the slight quiver in her hands, the determined tilt of her chin. It was absurd, yet captivating. How could someone so ordinary, so unassuming, make him feel this unsettled and awake at the same time? He whispered softly to himself, almost as if speaking aloud might break the spell. The office building was silent as night draped over Gangnam. Hannah Kim was finishing her usual nightly rounds, the fluorescent lights casting long, stretched shadows across the polished floors. She had always loved these late-night shifts, the world quiet, the city's chaos reduced to distant hums of traffic. Tonight, she felt lighter than usual, almost playful. She put her phone on the corner of the cleaning cart and tapped play. A soft melody floated through the empty conference room. The tune was slow, almost hesitant, but soon, Hannah let herself move. She twirled the mop handle, swaying her hips, her laughter mingling with the soft echo of music in the high-ceilinged room. She wasn't just cleaning anymore. She was dancing, imagining herself free, away from bills, expectations, and the pressure to always be good enough. Her heart lifted, and a smile broke across her face, eyes sparkling with mischief. And then she heard it, a voice deep and amused, slicing through the quiet. "Nice moves. Should I hire you as entertainment?" Hannah froze, her cheeks burning crimson, and she spun around slowly, mop in hand. Standing in the doorway, leaning casually against the frame, was Ethan Park. His signature smirk was there, but his eyes, Those sharp, calculating eyes held amusement. He had caught her in her moment of unguarded joy, and yet, instead of judgment, there was curiosity, perhaps even delight. You scared me," she blurted out, trying to regain composure, her hands gripping the mop tighter, heart hammering in her chest, palms slightly sweaty. Ethan chuckled, stepping further into the room, his shadow stretching across the marble. Without warning, he grabbed a mop and mimicked her movements. Awkwardly at first, then with an unexpected grace, he attempted the twirls, the sways, exaggerating her own steps with a playful flair. Hannah blinked, trying not to laugh, but it was impossible. "You're impossible," she gasped, laughter bubbling up, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. Her chest felt light, as if all the stress of the day had been washed away in that one shared, ridiculous moment. "And you're unforgettable," Ethan said softly, voice low but warm, as if letting her in on a secret only she could understand. There was a pause, a shared heartbeat suspended in time. Hannah felt a knot in her stomach, a mix of embarrassment and a strange, thrilling warmth that spread through her chest, a flutter she couldn't ignore. The playful atmosphere was intoxicating. Ethan's presence was magnetic, drawing her out of herself, challenging her to feel, to react, to be seen in a way she rarely allowed. Her eyes, wide and shining, met his for a long, silent moment. Something unspoken passed between them, a spark, fragile yet potent, like the first light of dawn brushing over the city's skyline. Hannah tried to shake off the intensity, laughing nervously, feeling her heartbeat racing like a drum in her ears. "I have to finish cleaning," she said, trying to regain her usual poise. But her words sounded hollow, even to her own ears. Ethan tilted his head, studying her, his gaze softening, revealing a flicker of something he rarely showed, interest, maybe even admiration. "You really can't hide anything, can you?" he murmured, almost teasing, almost tender. Hannah bit her lip, a rush of heat spreading across her face, realizing he could see right through her defenses. Her chest tightened, a knot of anticipation forming, a tiny thrill of fear and excitement mixed together. She could feel her pulse in her neck, her hands trembling slightly despite her attempts to appear composed. She backed toward the door, the mop clutched to her chest like shield, but Ethan's presence was magnetic, impossible to ignore. For a brief second, she considered running, but her feet felt rooted, caught in the gravity of his gaze. "Go on," Ethan said finally, his voice calm, almost a whisper. "But don't think I'll forget this." Hannah's lips twitched into a small, reluctant smile as she stepped out, the cold air of the hallway brushing against her flushed skin. Her heart was still racing, the heat in her chest leaving a lingering warmth. She could feel her breath catching, a delicate mix of exhilaration and confusion, her mind replaying every flicker of his expression, every tilt of his head. Outside the empty conference room, she leaned against the wall, closing her eyes for a moment, letting out a soft laugh. "He's different," she thought. "Not like anyone I've met before. And yet, why does it feel like he knows me?" Meanwhile, Ethan lingered in the room, mop in hand, smiling to himself. The image of Hannah, laughing and dancing in her own little world, was etched in his mind. For the first time, he felt something other than control, strategy, and obligation. He felt warmth, curiosity, and perhaps, he admitted reluctantly, a twinge of longing. The night air outside was cool, brushing against her face as she walked down the hallway. Her chest still fluttered, her stomach twisting with anticipation and confusion. She couldn't quite understand the pull she felt toward Ethan Park, yet she knew somewhere deep down that something significant had begun. The mornings in Gangnam had begun to feel different for Hannah Kim. The routine, once monotonous, now carried an undercurrent of anticipation she couldn't shake. Each step she took across the polished marble floors of the park group lobby seemed to echo with a memory of the night she had danced in the empty conference room, and the mischievous smile of Ethan Park lingered like a shadow in her mind. Coincidence or fate had a way of rewriting lives in small, unnoticeable ways. Hannah soon discovered this. It started subtly. She was now assigned to clean Ethan's office every morning. At first, she thought it was random, a shift in schedules, nothing more. But with each passing day, the encounters began to feel intentional, charged with a quiet electricity neither could fully acknowledge. That morning, she pushed open the heavy glass doors to his office, mop and bucket in hand, trying to mask the flutter in her stomach. She noticed the subtle scent of his cologne before she saw him, a mixture of cedarwood and something clean, sharp, and undeniably him. Ethan was seated at his desk, reviewing documents, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened slightly. He looked a human, vulnerable even. "Morning," he said without looking up. His voice, usually crisp and commanding, held a hint of warmth today. "Morning," she replied, heart pounding, palms slightly sweaty, as if the mere sound of his voice caused a small storm in her chest. Small, harmless interactions began to grow. A shared cup of coffee, an exchanged joke, brief comment on the weather. The walls between them were slowly dissolving, brick by brick, and Hannah, for the first time in months, allowed herself to enjoy these small moments without fear or hesitation. But life had its way of testing moments of serenity. That day, she was carrying a tray of cleaning supplies when her elbow knocked against a coffee cup, sending it tumbling toward the expensive carpet. The liquid spread quickly, dark and menacing against the ivory fibers. Hannah froze, eyes wide, heart thudding wildly, cold sweat forming on her back. No, 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 she thought, panic clawing at her throat. Before she could even bend down to try and stop it, Ethan was there, crouching beside her, his hands steady and calm. His presence alone made her heartbeat slow, just enough for her to catch her breath. "If anyone asks," he said, a teasing glint in his eyes, "I'll say I forced you to spill it so I could help." Hannah blinked, stunned. The warmth in his voice, the kindness in his actions, struck a chord deep within her. She couldn't help the laugh that escaped her lips, relief and embarrassment mingling in a heady cocktail of emotions. "You're unbelievable," she whispered, cheeks flushed, stomach twisting in an unfamiliar, thrilling way. "And you're remarkable," he replied softly, brushing a stray hair from her forehead, a gesture so intimate it made her heart lurch. The room seemed smaller, warmer. The ordinary morning transformed into a scene heavy with unspoken tension. The day continued, but neither could ignore the charged energy lingering between them. Each glance, each accidental touch, made Hannah acutely aware of the rapid beating of her heart, the slight quiver in her hands, the warmth pooling in her chest. Ethan, for his part, found himself noticing the subtle curve of her jaw, the determined set of her shoulders, the way her eyes seemed to reflect light differently when she looked at him. By late morning, Ethan made a casual suggestion that sent Hannah's pulse sky high. "Care for coffee in the lobby?" he asked, voice low, almost hesitant, yet infused with a quiet intensity. Hannah froze, a swirl of emotions rising in her. Her chest tightened, her stomach fluttered, and a sudden heat rose to her cheeks. She wanted to say yes, to leap into the chance to be near him, but the practical part of her brain intervened. "I have work," she said finally, trying to sound composed, though her voice betrayed her hesitation. Yet, even as she walked away, she couldn't help but glance back. Ethan's smile caught her eye, a smile so rare, so genuine, that it pulled at something deep within her. Her breath caught in her throat, a soft gasp escaping as her heart skipped a beat. It was the kind of smile that promised understanding, patience, and something more dangerous, hope. Ethan watched her retreating figure, leaning against the polished desk, the corner of his mouth lifting in a soft, almost imperceptible grin. His chest felt tight, his mind unusually quiet. He had spent years commanding attention, expecting deference, but this unguarded, unapologetic presence of Hannah Kim had shaken something he hadn't realized he was guarding, his heart. As the day wore on, small coincidences continued. They bumped into each other in corridors, exchanged fleeting words over printers, and even shared moments of laughter when Hannah's clumsiness, or perhaps fate, led to tiny mishaps. Each encounter tightened the invisible thread weaving them together, the tension escalating, palpable yet unspoken. By evening, Hannah found herself lingering near the lobby, her mind replaying every look, every word, every tiny shared laugh. She could feel the flutter in her chest, the heat rising to her cheeks, the knot of anticipation in her stomach. Why does he affect me like this? She wondered, feeling a warmth that was both exhilarating and terrifying. And Ethan, alone in his office later that night, leaned against the window, looking at the city lights. He remembered the way she laughed, the light in her eyes, the courage she carried in the face of a world that often ignored her. Something inside him shifted, a quiet, dangerous pull towards someone who seemed so ordinary, yet was utterly extraordinary. The rain fell relentlessly over Gangnam that night, turning the streets into shimmering rivers of light from the neon signs and passing cars. Hannah Kim waited at the bus stop, shivering as cold droplets soaked through her thin jacket and clung to her hair. Her hair plastered to her cheeks, and her hands trembled slightly from the chill. Every breath she exhaled mingled with the misty night air, forming tiny clouds that disappeared almost instantly into the darkness. Her heart felt heavy, a knot tightening in her stomach, but she kept her gaze fixed on the blurred headlights of approaching buses, willing herself to ignore the cold and the loneliness that gnawed at her. The city felt both alive and indifferent. Crowds rushed past with umbrellas, faces hidden, muffled conversations echoing off the slick pavement. Hannah felt invisible, a small figure in a world too busy to notice her existence. She hugged her arms to herself, trying to hold on to warmth, but the cold seeped through, biting at her skin, making her shiver involuntarily. Her chest tightened, not just from the cold, but from the ache of a loneliness she had tried to deny for too long. Then, without warning, a sleek black car slid to a stop beside her. The headlights illuminated her wet, bedraggled figure, and for a moment she tensed, unsure whether to be frightened or relieved. The window rolled down, and a familiar calm voice broke through the storm. "Get in. You'll get sick." Hannah froze. Her heart lurched violently, pounding against her ribcage as if trying to escape. She looked up and saw him, Ethan Park, the man whose presence had quietly invaded her days and thoughts, sitting in the driver's seat, his expression uncharacteristically soft, concerned. The rain slid down the windshield, distorted reflections of streetlights, painting his face in a surreal, cinematic glow. "Ethan," she stammered, caught between relief and embarrassment. Her body was soaked, chilled to the bone, and yet stepping into the car felt like stepping into a sanctuary she hadn't known she needed. Inside, warmth enveloped her. Steam fogged the windows, the leather seats cradling her as she shook off the rain. Ethan started the car, and silence hung heavy between them, not awkward, but laden with unspoken words and emotions neither had yet admitted. "You always act so strong," he said softly, his eyes not on the road, but on her. "Don't you ever get tired?" Hannah's breath caught. The words pierced something deep inside her, exposing vulnerability she had long hidden behind a mask of diligence and independence. Her hands fidgeted with the hem of her wet jacket, and she felt the familiar tremor of emotion rising. "If I stop smiling, I'll break," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper, but the honesty vibrated in the small space between them. Her chest felt tight, her throat knotted, and her eyes glistened with the weight of unspoken hardships. Ethan glanced at her sideways, his own chest tightening at the sight of her fragility mixed with unwavering courage. For the first time, he felt compelled not to command, not to impress, but simply to be present. His fingers tightened around the steering wheel, knuckles pale, but his gaze never wavered from her. Something about the honesty in her eyes, the raw courage it took just to exist in the world on her own terms, drew him closer than he had expected. The car moved through the rain-slicked streets, yet the world outside seemed to blur, leaving only the cocoon of warmth and unspoken intimacy. Hannah's hands rested in her lap, still trembling slightly, her heart pounding, a mix of relief, fear, and something tender, something dangerously like hope. For a moment, time seemed to stretch. Ethan's gaze softened, lips parting slightly as if to speak, perhaps to bridge the gap between curiosity and desire. Hannah felt a flutter in her stomach, the kind that makes the air around you seem heavier, charged, almost electric. Her pulse raced, every nerve alert. She dared a glance at him, and in that fleeting instant, the world outside, the rain, the cold, the city lights, disappeared. There was only him, only this suspended moment, only the fragile, unspoken tension between two souls who had begun to notice each other in ways neither expected. Then the car slowed, a momentary pause in the chaos. Ethan's face leaned closer, eyes softened, lips almost brushing the space where vulnerability and courage met. But the sound of a horn from a nearby street snapped them both back. The car stopped at a light, and reality intruded, pulling them apart before words, before confessions, before anything could fully unfold. Hannah's chest heaved with the intensity of the emotion swirling inside her. Her stomach fluttered violently, a mix of longing and fear, and her fingertips tingled from the adrenaline and the rain. She realized, with a startling clarity, that this encounter had left something unspoken yet indelible between them, a tether that neither could ignore. Ethan exhaled, a quiet, almost imperceptible sigh escaping him. The vulnerability in her eyes, the quiet strength she carried, had etched itself into his mind and heart. He wanted to say so much, to break the silence, but the world had a way of demanding patience. He would wait, longer than usual if necessary, but he would not let this thread slip away. The days following the rainy night seemed almost surreal to Hannah Kim. Every morning, the crisp Gangnam air greeted her with a gentle sting, but she found herself looking forward to her routine more than ever. The memory of Ethan's presence in the car, the warmth, the silent understanding, the faint brush of vulnerability in his gaze, lingered like a secret melody in her chest. Her heart would flutter at the smallest things, the echo of his laugh down the hallway, the faint aroma of his cologne drifting from his office. For Ethan, the past few days had been an awakening. The structured, predictable world he had meticulously built now felt fragile and hollow. The intensity of his responsibilities, the board meetings, the endless phone calls, the constant expectations of being a part, had never felt so heavy. And yet, thoughts of Hannah, her fearless honesty, her unpretentious charm, seemed to cut through the fog of his life like sunlight-piercing clouds. It began subtly. Ethan started noticing the little things about her, the careful way she organized cleaning supplies, the soft hum she let out while mopping, the occasional spark of frustration when things didn't go perfectly. And slowly, almost unconsciously, he began to treat her differently. The aloof, commanding man who had always expected obedience began to offer moments of kindness, attention, and gentle teasing. One morning, as Hannah lifted a heavy bucket of soapy water, her muscles trembling under the strain, she felt a sharp pain in her shoulder. The cold sweat prickled her back and her chest tightened, not just from the effort, but from the sudden fear of dropping the bucket. "Careful!" Ethan's voice rang out, closer than she expected. She looked up, startled, and saw him rushing toward her. Before she could protest, he lifted the bucket from her hands, his strong arms steady and reassuring. His chest brushed hers for a fleeting second, and Hannah's breath hitched, her stomach fluttering with a mix of embarrassment and something deeper she couldn't name. "You don't have to do everything alone," he said softly, eyes holding hers in a way that left her speechless. The warmth of his voice, the subtle gentleness of his touch, sent a shiver through her spine. Her heartbeat thundered, chest tightening, throat dry, as though the room itself had contracted to focus on them alone. Hannah looked at him, breath trembling slightly, and for the first time she felt truly seen, not as a cleaner, not as someone beneath the Park legacy, but as Hannah Kim, strong, flawed, courageous, and human. And in that instant, the small walls she had built around her heart began to crumble. Ethan, noticing her hesitation, offered a small, reassuring smile. It was not the confident, playful grin he usually wore, but a softer, more vulnerable expression, a glimpse of the man beneath the carefully maintained armor. And Hannah felt her chest swell, a warmth blooming in her heart, a quiet acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, she could trust him. The days that followed were filled with subtle, stolen moments. Ethan would bring coffee to her workspace, balancing the cup with casual elegance while offering a teasing remark or playful smile. Hannah's laughter began to come easier, her steps lighter. Each gesture, each glance, wove them closer together, the unspoken thread tightening with every shared smile and accidental brush of hands. One afternoon, while organizing a storage room, Hannah stumbled, tripping over a box. She caught herself just before falling, but Ethan appeared instantly, steadying her with an instinctive grace that made her heart hammer. His hands lingered, steadying her balance, and Hannah felt a rush of heat flood her chest, a shiver running down her spine. The closeness, the unplanned contact, made her pulse spike and stomach twist. She wanted to pull away, yet she couldn't help but lean slightly into the warmth of his presence. "You okay?" he asked, voice low, intimate, as though asking more than just about her physical well-being. His gaze held hers, searching, patient, and unwavering. I'm fine," she whispered, voice catching. Her chest tightened again, eyes glistening with a mix of embarrassment, relief, and the undeniable pull she felt toward him. For a brief, suspended moment, time seemed to hold its breath. The world outside the storage room, noise, responsibilities, expectations, vanished. There was only Hannah, there was only Ethan, and the quiet electricity between them that neither dared to name aloud. And then someone opened the door. The interruption was abrupt, cruelly ordinary, and the delicate tension shattered like glass. Hannah quickly straightened, her face flushing, hands shaking slightly. Ethan stepped back, returning to his usual composure, but the warmth in his eyes lingered, a silent promise that this connection was far from over. That evening, as Hannah walked home, her mind replayed every detail. The weight of his hands as he steadied her, the softness in his eyes, the warmth that lingered long after he had stepped back. Her chest ached with a mixture of longing and confusion, stomach fluttering with emotions too complex to name, throat tight as she whispered to herself, "He's different. He sees me. And I can't stop thinking about him." Meanwhile, Ethan returned to his office, shoulders tense, mind racing. Every corner of his life seemed to echo with her presence. The way she laughed, the courage she carried, the gentle defiance in her eyes. He leaned against the window, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance, heart tight and chest heavy. For the first time, he felt that wealth, power, and prestige meant little compared to the vulnerability and connection he felt with someone like Hannah Kim. The park group headquarters buzzed with the usual hum of activity. Phones rang incessantly, keyboards clattered, and the scent of coffee mingled with the faint aroma of polished wood. But inside Ethan Park's office, a quiet tension hung in the air, heavier than any storm outside. His father, Mr. Park, sat across from him, the sharp lines of his face betraying both concern and disapproval. The room, usually a space of strategic planning and calculated decision-making, now felt suffocating. Every word, every glance a measured strike. "Ethan," Mr. Park began, his voice calm yet edged with authority. "We need to talk about your distractions." He leaned forward, hands clasped tightly on the polished mahogany desk. "Spending time with an employee like this is unwise. It's unprofessional. It could ruin your future." Ethan's jaw tightened. He had expected this confrontation eventually, but the weight of his father's words made his chest tighten, stomach twisting with tension. His mind raced, heart thumping so loudly he feared it might give away the storm raging inside him. "She's not a distraction," he said, voice firm but low, careful to maintain control. "She's Hannah, and she matters." Mr. Park's eyes narrowed. "Hannah? She's a cleaner, Ethan. She's beneath you. Your place, our legacy, is not for frivolous attachments." The words were sharp, cutting through the air like a blade. Ethan felt the familiar pang of conflict, the tug-of-war between duty and desire, but this time his resolve did not waver. "She's not frivolous," he replied, leaning back, gaze unwavering. "She's brave, honest, and real. She's the first person who sees me as me, not as the Park heir. And I won't pretend that doesn't matter." A tense silence filled the room, broken only by the distant hum of the building. Mr. Park's face hardened, but there was an unspoken acknowledgement. Ethan was resolute. Still, the elder Park's disapproval weighed heavily, a shadow of consequence hovering over Ethan's defiance. Outside the office, Hannah walked down the hall, carrying a stack of documents to deliver to another department. Her steps were light, but her chest tightened when she noticed the muffled conversation echoing through the slightly ajar door of Ethan's office. Curiosity and a creeping sense of dread mingled in her stomach. She paused, glancing at the names on the documents, feeling the blood drain slightly from her face as she realized she could hear every word. "I won't let this ruin what we've built." Ethan's voice resonated softly, but firmly. "She's not nonsense. She's Hannah." And Hannah froze. Her grip on the documents tightened, her knuckles whitening, and a chill ran down her spine. She had never heard him speak about her like that, not with such clarity, such intensity. Her chest tightened, heart thumping wildly in her ribcage, eyes brimming with unshed tears. She could feel the weight of his conviction, the raw honesty in his words, and it left her both breathless and terrified. "Ethan," Mr. Park's voice was sharp now, snapping her out of the moment. "Control yourself. This is not a game." Hannah's stomach sank. She felt a sudden, overwhelming sense of vulnerability, as if she had been laid bare before someone she revered and feared in equal measure. The walls she had built around her emotions trembled, and her throat tightened as she tried to swallow the lump forming there. Every instinct screamed at her to leave, to escape before she could feel too much, before she could be seen too clearly. Yet, even as she stepped back, her mind replayed Ethan's words over and over. "She's Hannah." And the sincerity in his voice, the courage it must have taken to say that, ignited a warmth in her chest, a flicker of hope she hadn't dared to nurture. Her hands shook slightly, stomach twisting with a mixture of fear, longing, and disbelief. Hannah hurried down the corridor, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes, the documents trembling in her grip. She ducked into a side stairwell, leaning against the cold wall as her chest heaved, trying to steady her racing heartbeat. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotions, gratitude, fear, exhilaration, and the impossible pull of something she didn't yet have words for. Meanwhile, inside the office, Ethan ran his hands through his hair, frustration and longing battling within him. He knew his father would not easily relent, that the world he was born into demanded conformity and obedience. Yet the thought of Hannah being diminished or hurt by anyone, including the expectations of his family, was unbearable. His chest tightened, eyes clouded with both determination and concern. He wouldn't let her be pushed aside. The day stretched on, but neither could escape the weight of the moment. Hannah, hidden from view, felt a knot of both hope and fear tightening in her chest. Her legs trembled slightly as she made her way home, rain lightly dusting the streets, a reflection of her conflicted emotions. Every step was heavy, every breath caught in her throat as she replayed Ethan's words, wondering what the future held for them both. The morning sun rose over Gangnam, but its light could not penetrate the storm that raged quietly in Hannah Kim's heart. She had awoken early, the city still hushed beneath a blanket of dawn, yet her room felt suffocating, heavy with the weight of impossible decisions. She had replayed the previous day's events countless times in her mind. Ethan's defiance, his heartfelt words, his courage to see her, not as an employee, but as her. And yet, the confrontation with his father, the threat of repercussions, and the growing complications left her heart pounding, chest tight, stomach twisting. She packed a small bag with trembling hands, fingers brushing over the worn corners of notebooks and a scarf she loved, and slipped a folded piece of paper inside. A single page, small and simple, yet heavy with the words she could not speak aloud. Her hand shook as she wrote the final line. "Thank you for everything. Goodbye." Her heart felt like it would burst through her chest, a mix of longing, fear, and sorrow creating a storm inside her. She crumpled the note slightly, then flattened it again, as if doing so could steady her racing pulse. The act of leaving was both terrifying and necessary. She needed distance, clarity, and time to process the emotions that had erupted like wildfire between them. When she reached the park group headquarters, the familiar lobby seemed alien, oppressive even. Every polished floor, every glass panel reflected memories she had tried to cherish but now felt unbearable. She moved silently, avoiding Ethan, who would have surely noticed if she lingered. Instead, she slipped quietly to the storage area where she knew he wouldn't immediately find her. She left the note atop the small counter, the paper trembling slightly in the early morning breeze that filtered through a half-open window. Meanwhile, Ethan arrived at work, unaware of Hannah's absence. The usual hum of activity in the office did little to mask the uneasy feeling in his chest, a sense that something was amiss. As he walked toward the supply room, he noticed the small, folded paper on the counter. Curiosity and a flicker of dread pricked at his heart as he picked it up. His eyes scanned the familiar handwriting, heart hammering violently in his chest, stomach twisting into knots. "Thank you for everything. Goodbye." Time seemed to stop. The words hit him like a blow, each syllable resonating painfully in his chest. His palms grew sweaty, heart racing as if trying to escape its cage. He ran his fingers over the paper again, unwilling to believe the truth it carried. The world around him, the polished floors, the distant chatter, the hum of the air conditioning, faded into insignificance. There was only Hannah, only the note, only the realization that he had been too late to say the words that truly mattered. Ethan bolted from the office, ignoring the startled looks of colleagues, his shoes clicking loudly against the marble floors. He didn't wait for the elevator, didn't pause to breathe, his every thought consumed by her absence. The streets of Gangnam blurred past him as he sprinted, rain suddenly beginning to fall, soaking him instantly, mingling with the sweat of panic and desperation. His chest heaved violently, stomach tight with anxiety, a raw, aching urgency propelling him forward. "Hannah," he shouted, voice breaking against the rain, echoing off buildings, bouncing across the empty streets. His words were desperate, charged with emotion he had never allowed himself to feel so fully before. His throat burned, chest tight, lungs gasping for air, but he didn't stop. Every step, every heartbeat screamed a single truth. He couldn't lose her, not to distance, not to fear, not to circumstance. From across the street, Hannah watched. She had hidden behind a large city bus, drenched from the rain, shoulders trembling. Tears ran down her cheeks, mingling with raindrops, and her heart felt as if it were being squeezed in two. She had never imagined leaving would feel like this, so hollow, so raw, so impossibly painful. Every step Ethan took toward her made her chest tighten further, stomach flutter, and throat constrict. Yet she stayed hidden, a mix of fear and pride holding her back. Ethan's eyes scanned the streets frantically. Every reflection in a shop window, every shadow cast by streetlights, every moving figure made his heart leap. Then he saw her small, soaked, trembling, and yet strikingly defiant behind the bus. Time seemed to slow. The rain plastered hair to her face, cheeks flushed with cold and emotion. Her eyes, wide and glistening, met his across the distance, and in that gaze he saw everything he had been missing: hope, fear, longing, and love. He pushed through the crowd of pedestrians, ignoring everything else, until he reached the bus where she had hidden. His chest heaved violently, arms aching from running, yet he could barely focus on anything other than the sight of her. "Hannah, please, don't leave," he gasped, voice breaking, soaked to the bone, but unwavering in its sincerity. The rain drummed against them, a backdrop to the raw vulnerability in the space between them. Hannah's chest tightened further. The warmth of his presence, the sincerity in his soaked, desperate eyes, made her stomach flutter, heart pounding like a drum in her chest. Yet fear and pride still whispered caution. She swallowed, throat tight, tears falling freely, yet part of her longed to run into his arms, to let the ache and longing finally dissolve. The weeks that followed Hannah's disappearance felt like a slow, endless winter for Ethan Park. The Park Group headquarters, normally a place of calculated order and bustling energy, had become a hollow echo chamber. Meetings passed with Ethan present but absent, his mind consumed entirely by the memory of her soaked figure behind the bus, her trembling form, the small, impossible thread of hope in her gaze. His chest ached constantly, heart hammering in a painful rhythm that no boardroom, no conference call could silence. Ethan's colleagues noticed. His usual sharpness dulled, his playful teasing vanished, replaced by a restless intensity. He refused invitations, shrugged off casual lunches, and snapped at even the mildest inquiries from his father. Mr. Park's frown deepened with each passing day, but Ethan's resolve only strengthened. He would not allow the walls of wealth, power, or expectation to keep him from what, or rather, who mattered most. Meanwhile, Hannah navigated her own version of purgatory. She had taken up temporary work at a small cafe, hiding in plain sight, trying to rebuild a sense of stability she feared she had lost. Each day, she felt a constant ache in her chest, a twisting emptiness that refused to fade. Her mind replayed the moments with Ethan, the kindness in his gestures, the warmth in his gaze, the courage in his words. Yet fear and uncertainty kept her from returning, her pride a fragile shield against vulnerability. She would serve coffee to strangers, her hands steady, yet her heart thundering in her chest. Every brush of a patron's hand against hers, every echo of laughter or conversation, reminded her of the absence she felt deep in her core. The memory of Ethan's voice calling her name, soaked and desperate, haunted her like a ghost she could neither chase nor flee. One evening, after closing the cafe, Hannah walked slowly along the river Hahn. The city lights shimmered on the water, reflections rippling with a faint breeze. Her chest felt heavy, stomach twisted, throat tight. She hugged her jacket closer, shivering, not from the cold, but from the void that had settled in her heart. The wind whispered against her face, carrying fragments of the life she had left behind. The office, the laughter, the rain, the smell of leather and cedarwood. Every step was a reminder of what she missed, yet feared she could never reclaim. Across the city, Ethan roamed streets he had once known intimately. He found himself at the bus stop where he had first seen her in the rain, alone and vulnerable, a moment that had etched itself into his memory. The rain had returned that evening, light and steady, a gentle echo of the storm that had shifted his world weeks ago. He stood there, drenched, heart hammering, muscles tense from hours of restless pacing. His mind replayed every glance, every laugh, every brush of her hand against his in the office. His chest ached, stomach twisted, and a low, frustrated sigh escaped him. "I can't let this go," he whispered to the empty street, voice barely audible over the soft patter of rain. "I won't. Not now. Not ever." Days blended into nights, each filled with echoes of absence and longing. Ethan threw himself into work, yet every achievement, every decision, felt hollow without her. He declined every arranged meeting, every opportunity designed to secure his future, because the thought of a life without Hannah's presence was unbearable. Even amidst the power and wealth he commanded, he felt emptier than he had ever imagined possible. Then came the night of the company gala, a lavish event filled with glittering chandeliers, elegant attire, and the hum of superficial conversation. Ethan had agreed to attend reluctantly, chest tight with unease. He had been counting on one thing. Nothing could prepare him for what happened next. Across the ballroom, moving with careful, understated grace, was Hannah. She was not in her uniform, not in the practical clothes she had worn in the cafe. She was wearing a simple yet elegant dress, hair tied back, her presence quiet but impossible to ignore. Time seemed to slow as their eyes met from across the crowded room. Every sound, every flicker of light, every murmured word around them faded into insignificance. Hannah froze. Her chest tightened violently, stomach fluttering with a mix of fear, disbelief, and anticipation. Her throat constricted as she realized that all the effort to protect herself, to remain distant, was crumbling in the face of that gaze. Ethan's eyes were relentless, full of longing, recognition, and the unspoken plea that she come to him. Ethan felt the same whirlwind of emotions. His chest ached, stomach knotted, pulse racing. The room felt smaller, the crowd a blur, every detail of her, the curve of her jaw, the subtle flare of her nostrils, the intensity in her eyes, etched into his memory as if time itself had slowed to allow him to take it all in. The grand ballroom of the Park Group gala shimmered with opulence. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbows across the polished marble floors, and the murmur of elegant conversation filled the air. The scent of fresh flowers mingled with expensive perfumes, creating an intoxicating atmosphere of wealth and refinement. Ethan Park moved through the crowd with the practiced ease of a man born into privilege, yet his eyes were fixed on one figure, Hannah Kim. She was at the far side of the room, carrying trays of champagne, her movements graceful, almost ethereal against the glittering chaos around her. His chest tightened at the sight of her. Each step she took, every tilt of her head, sent a jolt of electricity through him, a mixture of longing, admiration, and frustration. His pulse raced, stomach knotting as he realized how impossibly, overwhelmingly, he had fallen for her. The memories of the past weeks, the stolen glances, the brushes of hands, the quiet moments of laughter and vulnerability flooded him, each one sharper and more insistent than the last. Ethan's mind raced. I can't waste another moment. Not now. Not when I know what she means to me. He strode toward the stage at the center of the ballroom, ignoring the whispers that followed him. The gala was a celebration of status, but for him, it had become a stage for truth. The master of ceremonies was mid-speech, unaware that the evening was about to take an unexpected turn. Ethan climbed the steps with determination, his chest heaving, pulse thunderous. The room fell into a murmur of confusion as he approached the microphone. He could feel the weight of countless eyes on him, the expectations of family, colleagues, and the entire Park legacy pressing down like a suffocating blanket. Yet, none of it mattered. There was only Hannah and the undeniable truth that he could no longer suppress. Hannah Kim, he began, voice steady yet filled with raw emotion, carrying across the hushed room. You taught me what really matters. I don't care what my family thinks. I don't care about expectations, power, or status. I only care about you. The words hung in the air, heavy with sincerity, resonance, and vulnerability. The room froze. Conversation ceased mid-sentence. Glasses hovered in midair. And there she was, Hannah frozen in place, heart pounding violently in her chest, stomach twisting with disbelief and anticipation. Her throat felt dry, tight as if the words she wanted to speak were trapped inside. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched the tray, eyes wide, glistening with emotion. Ethan's gaze locked onto hers, unwavering, magnetic. The intensity of his expression, the vulnerability in his voice, and the raw courage of his declaration struck her with the force of a tidal wave. Her chest tightened, stomach fluttering violently, and a warmth bloomed in her heart despite the tension and fear that still lingered. She wanted to run, to hide, yet every instinct urged her forward, toward the truth that had been aching between them for weeks. She whispered to herself, voice catching in her throat, unable to form the words that would match the depth of her own feelings. The crowd watched, oblivious to the storm of emotions playing out in the space between them. Her chest ached, and the familiar knot in her stomach tightened, yet there was a spark of courage igniting from deep within. Ethan's hand reached instinctively toward her, a silent invitation, a promise that he was there, unwavering, and that she could finally let go of the walls she had built. His eyes softened, lips curving into the faintest, most vulnerable smile. It was not the confident grin of the CEO, but the open, exposed, honest smile of a man utterly in love. Hannah's tray slipped slightly in her hands, the glasses clinking together in protest, echoing in the tense silence of the room. She froze, heart thundering, stomach twisting with a mix of fear and exhilaration. The moment was suspended in time, the air thick with anticipation. Her fingers brushed against the edges of the tray, as if holding onto a lifeline, yet all she wanted was to let go, to walk into his arms, to embrace the storm of emotions that had been building between them. Step by step, she moved forward. Her chest heaved, lungs struggling as if each breath carried the weight of weeks of longing, fear, and unspoken love. The room seemed to blur, the glittering chandeliers fading into insignificance. All that existed was Ethan, his gaze unwavering, his presence magnetic, and the undeniable pull between them. Ethan's heart raced, chest tight, as he watched her approach. The moment of hesitation melted away as she finally closed the distance, tears mingling with a tentative, joyous smile. The tension, the fear, the weeks of longing, all coalesced into that single, powerful moment of connection. "Ethan," she whispered, voice trembling, chest tight, eyes shimmering with tears and laughter intertwined. "You're crazy," she added, a mixture of exasperation and joy. "Crazy for you," he replied, voice soft, yet resolute, a tremor of emotion betraying the depth of his feelings. The room erupted in applause, but for Ethan and Hannah, the noise was distant, inconsequential. They were locked in each other's gaze, the world beyond fading into irrelevance. Mr. Park's stern expression softened slightly as he observed, the unspoken acknowledgement of Ethan's courage and love flickering across his face. The moment Hannah's body finally pressed against Ethan's, the world seemed to dissolve around them. The grand ballroom of the Park Group Gala, the glittering chandeliers, the murmurs of the crowd, all faded into insignificance. Time slowed, each heartbeat echoing loudly in their chests, every breath shared between them carrying the weight of weeks, months, and perhaps lifetimes of unspoken emotions. Hannah buried her face in his chest, tears mingling with laughter, her heart thundering like a drum in her ribcage. She could feel the warmth of him, the steady strength of his embrace, and for the first time in weeks, she felt safe, seen, and understood. Her hands clutched the fabric of his suit, fingers trembling as if holding on to him could anchor her to this reality, this moment, this love. "You're crazy," she whispered, voice trembling, lips pressed against his shoulder. Her chest heaved violently, eyes shining with a mixture of relief and joy, as if finally allowing herself to release all the fear and uncertainty she had carried alone. "Crazy for you," Ethan replied, lips brushing her hair, voice low, resonant with the certainty of a man who had fought every obstacle, every expectation, and every fear to claim what truly mattered. His arms tightened around her, heart racing, stomach fluttering, every nerve alive with the electricity of their reunion. The applause of the gala faded into the background as they held each other, a quiet storm of emotion swirling around them. Mr. Park, standing nearby, observed silently. His expression, once stern and unyielding, softened. There was acknowledgement there, not just of Ethan's choice, but of the courage it took to embrace love fully, openly, against all odds. For Hannah, the world felt impossibly beautiful. She could feel the fluttering warmth of her heartbeat against Ethan's chest, the rise and fall of his breaths, the steady rhythm that mirrored her own. Every worry, every fear, every tear shed in secret seemed to melt away in the embrace of this moment. She laughed softly, a sound tinged with disbelief, relief, and pure joy. "I never thought I could feel this completely," she murmured, chest tight, stomach twisting with the intensity of her emotions. "You deserve it," Ethan whispered, voice breaking slightly. "Every bit of happiness, every laugh, every quiet moment. You've been brave, and I see you. Truly." The night unfolded around them like a dream. The gala continued, but for Ethan and Hannah, there was only the quiet, resonant heartbeat of a love that had survived distance, fear, and societal expectations. Slowly, they stepped away from the crowd, hand in hand, hearts still racing, eyes locked. The streets of Gangnam stretched before them, glistening under the soft glow of streetlights and the gentle patter of evening rain. Each step was a dance of anticipation and relief, every glance a silent affirmation of the bond they had forged. Days passed, and life began to take on a new rhythm. Hannah studied at a cozy cafe, books and papers spread around her, while Ethan waited outside, his presence a quiet but undeniable comfort. Their conversations were full of laughter, small confessions, and shared dreams. The tension, the longing, and the fear that had once defined them now transformed into moments of tenderness, understanding, and deep connection. One spring afternoon, under the soft pink blossoms of Namsan Tower, they finally shared a kiss, gentle, lingering, full of all the unspoken words and emotions that had built between them. The petals fell around them like delicate rain, a celebration of the love that had blossomed despite obstacles, distance, and fear. Chest against chest, heart against heart, they finally allowed themselves to breathe freely, to love fully, and to embrace the uncertain, beautiful journey ahead. Courage, Hannah whispered into the warm afternoon air, eyes shining, lips curved into a smile, isn't about avoiding fear. It's about embracing it and choosing love anyway. Ethan smiled down at her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. And sometimes, he said softly, it's about taking the risk, even when the world expects you not to. As they walked hand in hand through the cherry blossoms, the city of soul alive around them, one thing was clear. Their hearts had found home in each other, and nothing could undo the bond they had fought so hard to protect. And for anyone watching their story unfold, remember, love requires courage, vulnerability, and the willingness to embrace life's storms with an open heart. If you enjoyed Hannah and Ethan's journey, follow our channel for more heartfelt stories, emotional twists, and romance that touches the soul. Every story is a chance to feel, dream, and believe in the magic of love. Don't miss the next tale that will captivate your heart.